colors is already because it's going through some type of some alteration. That's why white is called Gavana Atzmi.
Or Pshuti.
Or Pshuti, right, exactly. So we're not talking about something you dying. When you dye something white, you could dye it blue, you could dye it green. It's going to be like Esis Achik and Esis Aksiva, that's what he's going to say. It's the reason it's so important is because it gives you, it gives you tools to visualize higher states of reality. That's really what it comes down to. Going back to the interface. I'm just speaking, what does this add? It adds because we live in such a material world. We constantly see things what they are, and that's it. We're not trained to think what they could be, what's the deeper layers.
What they really are.
Right, exactly. So by just describing this, someone say, who cares? Bottom line right now, it's color blue. But that's not the case. You're talking about what do you see, it's trying to appreciate. We talked about it when we spoke about the difference between the descriptive name and the functional name. Someone went by the Rebbe saw what they could be. They saw the neshama. When you look with real eyes, you see what a person really is. Not what they're doing, or what they're manifesting, or what they're even saying. Even in psychological terms, someone comes to you for advice. So they tell you their problem. 99.9% it's usually not the real problem. It's the symptoms of the problem, but they're aware of. It's like the guy's looking for his keys. So they say, but he lost them 100 yards away. He says, I'm looking where the light is shining. People look at their problems, but where the light is shining. They don't look where the real problem is. So what's the real thing that a trained eye or a sensitive mashpia does, soul does, is you look at the person and you try to see not what you're telling me, but what this is a symptom of. What is not visible, what's not visible to the eye. So essentially to really get to that existence, if there was no interface, existence would never be able to perceive deeper layers of its own reality, and definitely not layers of the divine reality. But because there is, it's all embedded in there. And you can reach through your examination and exploration, you could find God. The bottom line.
But only because God decided to make it that way. It's not logical. God decided to make it that way.
But remember, since we spoke before, the same God that's not logical decided, that means that decision is also infused with that which is beyond.
No, because it says, I'm sorry, then it works.
No, but
not necessarily.
But Yossi didn't hear the second half, it's vital.
Yeah.
The God that you're talking about, since he chose this logic has something in it that's not logical too. In the logic, it's not divorced from that. That's the point. That's a critical point. Critical, because without that you get back to in a way there's no interface, because you say, I really don't really connect with the real God. I connect to the God that decided to do it this way. That's why it's so important. That's what the Rebbe's big chiddush at the end, I said the later years, was that the God that could do it completely different chose, and we'll never know why he chose this way, but there's no question if he chose this way, it's not because it's logical. Because he didn't, right. Because there was no logic to make him that way. It's not like we exist and he says, I'm going to communicate with you. You're logical, so I'll also be logical. What do you mean? He created the logic before we were here. So you have to say that logic in some way is illogical.
It's him.
Yeah. Illogical as in, that's where the two meet. It's what Einstein actually said, that the unreasonable part of existence is that it's reasonable. When you study science, the real scientists, they'll tell you the real ones, like he says clearly.
The most reasonable part of this.
No, the most unreasonable part of existence is that it's reasonable.
Well,
It can make sense.
The most reasonable part of existence is that it's unreasonable.
Okay, but that's
Exactly the same.
I don't know about that. It makes it complete. No, if you really think about it, especially this, the fact that there is a logic to existence, if you really understand the essential parts, is absolutely miraculous. That it should make sense. That means that, pieces fall together and all that. So, but from a chassidus, from this point of view, that's exactly how we want it. So, okay. So this is what we're getting here is an understanding, in other words, how you relate to things. So there's a chaymer, there's a tzura, there's a shemateya, there's a shemapul. Okay. The chol regilu b'chinas tzura levad she'en etzem hadavar. See, this is what he's coming to Bavana. See, after all these chapters, you can get the impression that the whole image comes from Keli. Because we keep saying Keli describes the Eir. But the whole Hamshach is talking that the Eir also has an image. So in a way, he's not asking it, but he's coming to answer that as well. You see, because suddenly he's now going back to the Eir is a Surah. So he says, a rule. Here's a rule. This you can underline. Chol, Eir, V'gili, V'chinas Surah, Levad, She'ena Etzem Hadavar. Every energy and Gili and revelation is only a shape. It's not the Etzem. I sense it, but I'm trying to find the right words for it. We all relate to this line, but we still have to express the inexpressible, right? So let's figure out how to express this.
That or is not key, is not it?
No, I tell you, I'm talking now from, let's take a skeptic's point of view. Skeptics say, what are you talking about? I see a table. It's image. That's what it is.
So first of all, skeptic doesn't believe in the concept of Etzem and Gilui.
I know that's your shit. No, but you can explain to a skeptic also, Etzem Gili. Yeah, you can. That's what I'm trying to say here.
So this is a table.
Not a table. I see a person.
And
See, when we mean Etzem and Gili, we mean...
This is going to go deeper. He says, you think you're seeing a table, but really it's atoms and
Correct.
And molecules.
So that's still Gili.
That's the truth of the matter.
No.
That's a deeper understanding of it.
But is there anything beyond the atom? Let's put it this way. Go to the deepest, if you were able to travel into the wormhole,
Yes.
all the way to the bottom of the rabbit hole,
Right.
and you get to the end of this most subatomic particle.
Yes.
Is there anything more?
Yes, Higgs boson.
Yeah, but there's a whole theory.
God's particle, that's what they're looking at right now in Europe. Exactly.
He's right. But
Higgs boson, you know
The
about
whole
that?
branch of
The big
quantum
collider that they
they don't
yeah,
even
yeah,
exist.
yeah.
They don't even
They're
exist.
trying to get what they call God's particle. They labeled, scientists labeled it God's particle. That's
I wish we had someone that actually was there in Lubavitch when the Rebbe Rashab was saying this, so you can compare notes to how we take this and how they understood it. What was he saying?
They'd be,
Huh?
they'd be amazed.
They'd be amazed we're even sitting here and talking about it. I know, remember Hilovitz came in Tav Shalom with Ches. The Rebbe Rashab's a chassid. Then he went to Israel, he was Mechabish. Whatever, he left Lubavitch. Not, because the Rebbe Rashab, a lot of people left, the upheavals and stuff like that. But he came, he's connected to Yunik, he's related to Yunik.
that's his brother.
Okay, yeah.
Alter Hilovitz.
Alter Hilovitz. So he came, I remember, Lamed Ches, to Simchas Torah. And I saw him after Hakofis. He was an elderly man already, but he was like, sitting like, sometimes you sit in some setting after everybody leaves and just, you're amazed by what's going on. He was in awe. So I went over to him, a few guys. I think it was the first night of Hakofis. Ches? The first night was the Rebbe had a heart attack. Maybe it was Lamed Ches. I don't remember. Maybe I missed something. Maybe the years. It's the quantum reality is one of those years. Lamed Ches, Lamed Tes. But and I asked him, so what do you think? So he said, I saw Samarvov on the table here. I couldn't believe it. You remember when it was said? He didn't believe there'd be a sefer printed and there'd be people learning it. He was in Shtetl Lubavitch, talking about, back then. And then he saw the whole, the Hakofis itself.
What do you say about the Kagafas? He said.
He didn't have nothing to say. It was just for him. It was just alive. That which he lived with. He says, "But as you understand, the Rebbe Rashab was like Makar of the Bocher, and he would sit with us and bring with us. We thought we were the center of the existence, and that was that. No, he didn't have a vision of what's going to be. And this is like World War I, World War II, and they're talking Samarvov here. That's it didn't need to elaborate. It was pretty clear what he was. It's just the fact, it's like Avraham Avinu would pretty be, looking to see actually the promise was fulfilled, So anyway, so Surah Atzmis, so the way to talk Etzem and Gili, we understand it is Etzem and Gili is that when you really abstract it, Gili is a superimposed reality. Etzem Atzmus needs no expression to be. Doesn't need to express himself. So we say that the Muslim is an atzmizdika person. Atzmizdika person can be sitting at a table, and everybody can be engaged in the most important conversation. And you ask him, and he's sitting there. He doesn't need to say something to be. He doesn't need to be valued. Doesn't need to be complimented.
Self-contained.
He's self-generated, more than just self-control. Not just self-control. We're talking here that he has. Now that's also a surah because ultimately he's a human being. But we're talking about, relatively speaking, gili is expression. Expression, by definition, is a surah levad, not etzem adavar. As soon as you express, you could express what's inside of you, perhaps, but expression itself is. Let's take an example. Sunlight. Obviously, without sunlight, we have no existence. But sunlight on its own is only expression of a sun, not etzem adavar. So basically, Eid and Gili is in this context, I would say the best translation is expression. Expression of something. Expression already has it has a shape and form, and also is not etzem adavar. And there he goes again, parentheses. The etzem b'chinas chemer liyesi atzmi. The etzem is a b'china chemer, not chemer as in a negative way. We're not talking about like unshaped matter,
Right.
raw matter. Chemer meaning that it's substance. Surah has no substance. Let even better. Here, you want some? Here's a good one. Take the piece of clay.
Yes.
Let's say without clay, could you make a shape? No, it's ridiculous.
In Etzem we could.
Make a
You
mold.
said earlier that it's the level in Etzem.
Hold on. No. Without clay at all.
The idea.
Yeah, but the idea is already also shape and form. Then if you have to have someone who has the
You could have
idea.
that idea. Of
What's that? Let me finish what I was going to say. If you had no clay,
Yeah.
so there's nowhere to manifest surah. So if someone said to you, split to me this shape and form from the matter that you're shaping, you'd say I can't because there's no way for me to in any way express. It's like saying, give me sunlight without a sun. Give me a shape without something that's being shaped. I'm not talking about the artist envisioning.
Right.
I'm not talking about the artist. Let's talk about the object itself. So the piece of clay is necessary because that's a substance. The surah that you're adding in it doesn't really have any substance at all. That's what he's trying to say here. All it is a shape. All it is an expression of something else.
An archetype is a shape. It's a mold without any substance.
So the chemer begins chemer liyesi atzmi, u'k'may chemer shu etzem hus hadavar. So when you say this clay has now been shaped into, let's say, the shape of a table, the clay has been shaped. Take away the clay and you have no table. So shape on its own is just is always needs something else to ride on. Let's put it that way. It doesn't have its own self.
Surah.
Yeah, that's surah.
Gili, Surah, same thing.
It's Greek already.
Huh? Oh, it's Bria.
וכמי החמש שהוא עצם הוא סדובר. וגם ליייסי בבחינס פשיטס עדיין, and since it's also pshittis, it's not shaped yet. It's completely, what we call it, seamless? Not seamless, it's completely, no, there's a word, pshittis. Pshittis, unshaped. Pshittis means that's simple,
Right.
but simple as in
You like using my raw.
raw is not the word I would use here.
It doesn't have a substance yet.
Pshittis is substanceless,
Yeah.
but it's really a seamlessness. It's really the
You're talking about clay here.
clay is my example.
I know,
Remember
so
that.
speak in your example. What is Peaches in your example?
Pshittis means it's not shaped yet. There's
Right,
no shape. It's
unshaped
just
clay,
a raw. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lump of clay.
Lump of clay.
Yeah. Who is chemer pashut? But remember, we're talking here chemer higher than surah, not chemer lower than surah.
Right.
We're talking here
Unshaped piece of clay.
think of it. You know what? Think of it like a seed before it becomes a fetus. Think of it like that. Instead, I mean, it's already it's chemer. It has not yet become even defined by female and male. The chromosomes haven't yet split to that extent. Just to use an example. Just an example.
That doesn't really work out because
No, whatever.
the male has to bring the.
It's all a muscle.
You can't have a tangible example.
You can't have a perfect muscle.
Okay.
All right.
והאיר הוא בכנס סורה שאין לעצמי.
You know, I-
It's air, the air.
right, right.
So the עצם בכנס חמל יעשה עצמי. והאיר בכנס סורה שאין עצמי. And the air is what gives it some type of expression and some type of shape and form. ובהכרח שבו בבכנס סיר. He's explaining what he said before, that the rule. That every gili, this is a parenthesis explaining it. Every gili means that it has to have, every expression has to have some, so he says, behechlech. You have to say that it comes in some shape. As it's known, every gili, every revelation, every expression has to have a shape, the way it's, how is it expressing it?
Right. Isn't that what we said, begin with parenthetically, now the Chemer expresses itself, the Davar Atzmi expresses itself in the way of a...
Let's finish.
That's a Sir Atzmius.
He didn't finish the subject, so let's finish it. I'm sure he's gonna... Okay, so this is all the parentheses still. Well, I give the example before. You're sitting there, an Atzmizdik person, doesn't have to say anything, doesn't need to express himself and so on. Then he expresses himself. As soon as he expresses himself, what's he say? There has to be some definition to it. You can't define how he is on his own. But when he expresses himself, did he express himself intelligently, emotionally? Did he sing? Did he this he say? What did he say? As soon as there's expression, you're talking about some definition. And these two things are interdependent. The masha hu atzmi hu b'chinas pshitas bli shum tzir, u masha elvad hari hu b'chinas tzir. In other words, he's saying two things here. Etzem is a chemer poshet that has no tzir. It's a
undefined mass.
Undefined mass.
Undifferentiated.
Uncompounded.
Okay. Basically.
That's the one that constantly when you're using all the...
And has no shape and form. Whereas Eir, that's expressed itself, has a shape and form. And the two things are interdependent. What are the two things? That it's an atzmi, and that it's poshet, or that it's poshet and has no tzir.
There's one with tzir, one without tzir.
But two things. The two things is that the etzem by definition is chemer poshet.
Yeah, no tear.
That. No, and what's the second half? What's the habahataya? What's
That the A has to have it.
No, the Eir and the etzem is the habahataya?
Yeah.
No, that you can't say habahataya on Eir and
not
etzem.
Talia.
Habahataya has to be two things and two properties in the thing itself.
Just like the A, just like the etzem.
Habahataya is not.
Just like the etzem cannot express itself, that is why the Gilu has to express itself.
Is that the habahataya?
I don't know what that the whole
What does it say? What does it say?
could be unusual whole
The mashu atzum k'nas bli shum tzir,
in the first
mashu
one
levad
it
k'nas
has no
tzir.
tzir, and the second one says it has not etzim, it has a tzir.
But habahataya doesn't mean a just like. Then it's just
No,
that.
they're dependent on one another.
Why is it dependent?
Because
What's dependent? The Eir is dependent on the etzem? No. What's dependent? If the etzem is chemer poshet, dependent on that's why it has no tzir. Eir, because it's not poshet, it's only expression, that's why it has a tzir. That's the two l'cheira.
Yeah, of course.
Interdependence. You agree?
Yeah, 100%.
What was that?
no, what did you say? What?
When you say
What dependent on what?
the fact that it's a chemer poshet,
Right.
it's an undefined
Right.
mass.
Right.
It's dependent on that's why it has no shape and form. It's interdependent.
but look
That's
inside.
hechech, that doesn't have a shape and
Read it
form.
inside again.
No, because he's saying both. Both.
So you're saying there's two dependencies.
Each one has the two.
Independent
Right.
dependence.
Can you read it inside a second?
I read it.
The mashu atzmi.
Stop. That's already the
That's- you
habahataya.
think
That's
so?
one.
And
Well,
because-
mashu levad hari b'chinas tzir.
Okay. But they're also dependent on each other because.
Not really.
Because
No,
by
what you say.
definition of
Okay, you
tzir
could say
means
as
not
soon as
etzem.
you could say as soon as it's Eir,
It's not
it's not
etzem.
etzem, and
Right.
therefore it's okay.
You have to have a few words there.
Two
They have to express the
inyanim,
whole-
two inyanim, each one of which is habahataya.
Okay, those are also so say it that way.
The next few words ties it up with the first parenthesis.
So you're saying besides in the klolos habehotalia, in each one there's a habehotalia also. Okay.
The next few words, the whole thing is here atmi, goes back to the first parenthesis. It defines that as being the tzura from the etzim. The two Rishonim. And I think they reverse back there because it's at the sheets.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, but that's back now outside of the
He
parentheses.
says if you go more into the Giluyim, you'll get that sense. So continue reading.
So back to the after the parentheses. So he said the Chol Eir Gilu b'chinas Tzura Levachein Etzem Adover. He just explained that in the parentheses. Varihu b'chinas Tzura Atzmis.
That's what Tzura Atzmis.
That's the Eir, is the Tzura Atzmis.
Now the Tzura Rishona is the Tzura from the Etzem, which has no. When the Atzmi expresses itself.
What are you saying that? No, one second. Chol Eir. I'm going back to before the parentheses says the Chol Eir Gilu b'chinas Tzura Levad she'ein Etzem Adover. And that Eir, Harihu b'chinas Tzura Atzmis l'yesib bo min ha'etzem. The double b'etzem Eir.
Yeah. That's when the Etzem expresses itself. It has
He didn't say. It doesn't say that. That I don't hear that at all here. He doesn't say that. Go back to before the play. He didn't talk about etzem. Etzem was a parenthesis idea. There was no etzem spoken outside the parentheses.
That's very true. That's 100%
that's
true.
what we can-
Nevertheless, you have to come on to an etzem.
What is
an expression?
That's not how I would understand.
Ayin Beis. Where was he?
Well, let me-
Was he in?
So the chol eir v'gili hu b'chinas tzura levad she'ein etzem adover. It's not the etzem adover. Now he says, "Varihu." This eir, this energy is a level of a fundamental, essential shape. The yesei bo min ha'etzem, because it comes from the etzem, from the essence. But dovuk ba'etzem, and it's bound to, it's cleaves to the source, the etzem. Varihu me'ein ha'etzem. Remember all the three things we spoke about earlier.
He mentions etzem himself.
So,
Outside the
what are you disagreeing with what I just said, or what?
Yes, I guess I am disagreeing.
So-
I think that Tzura Atzmi.
But first you have to know what I'm saying before you disagree. So let me tell you what I'm saying. I'm reading here, he said that he started off that the Tzelem and the Mus. He says Tzelem is a Tzura Atzmis, the Mus is a Tzura Mitzura.
Yeah.
So now he's going to explain generally this is Eir and Keli. Tzelem, the Tzura Atzmis, is Eir, energy. He's explaining why. The whole Eir, any energy, any expression is already has shape and form. In the parentheses he explained how that shape and form is exclusive to the energy and to the expression, and not the etzem. And now he's going back and saying, and this expression of the Eir is a Tzura Atzmis, it's essential shape, because it comes, l'yesei ba, he says three things. It comes from the etzem, it's bound to the etzem, and it's similar to the etzem. Shemina Eir yedim al kapanim mitzias etzem. Because from the Eir we know at least that there's something that it's coming from. In other words, when something expresses itself, at least you know there's a source for it. I mean, that's all I'm saying. That's nothing. I'm just reading Pshat here. There's no deep.
I'm with you.
Okay.
100%.
Now I'm just reading on.
Okay, fine. 100%.
Okay.
So you do still disagree or not disagree?
No, right on board with exactly what you're
Oh.
going to do.
And so, I said I didn't really explain it. I'm just want to see how he concludes the subject.
Yeah,
There.
okay.
Another parenthesis.
Okay.
Another parenthesis. V'davke the top of page 585. V'davke b'chinas tzira eir anu yedim mitzias etzem. And dafke, and specifically from the shape of the energy, we know the existence of the
And then this
essence.
over this vote. Hold it.
You have to trace
The
step
source.
back up to the source.
U'k'may eir hashemesh ha'eir uve'eir hayem, like the light of the sun and the light of the day, or eir haner, or the light of a flame of a candle. Harimin atzira eir, from the shape of the light, anu yedim es etzem mahu. We know what the etzem is, what it's like. For example, you see a flame, you know that it's what kind of source it's like. If you see sunlight, you know what kind of sun it's like. You don't necessarily know it's mahus, but you know at least the existence of etzem mahu. You know it's a sun. The Kamaykenu Baruchni is. It's interesting. He says Eir Hashemesh ve'Eir Hayem, as if it's like two things, and then it's Oy Eir Haner. So Eir Hashemesh ve'Eir Hayem seemingly is two ways to describe sunlight. I'll tell you why. Because sunlight can be directly seeing the sunlight. The day you don't see the sun, but you know it's day, daylight. So it's also a reflection of the sun, but more like the sun is able to such powerful light. And Eir Haner is a different muhus altogether. It's the light of a flame. The Kamaykenu Baruchni is Kashana Yedim Masigim Efana Ervagili Nuchaledam Mazeh Akapon Metzias Etzem. Same thing as a Ruchni. It's a physical example of light, physical light. Same thing as spiritual light. That when you know and appreciate and understand the way that something becomes begili. Like for example, let's say you see someone expressing love. So you know that there has to be somewhere etzem chesed, a source of this love. Because expression has to come from somewhere.
Has to be a lover.
That's how you know, upon him, at least the existence of this essence. 1 second. What's it what? Well, I would suggest we finish the subject. And then maybe a lot of things will be understood. Let's not jump.
Okay.
I'm reading it slowly, and we're picking the picture up. So right now we said two things. Every herb must be shape and form, and it's only a shape and has no substance of its own. It's not the thing itself. Now he's saying, on the other hand, however, it reflects and tells you about the thing itself. So the reflection, the shape and form is not this essential matter, but it tells you about it. It gives you at least the minimum. It tells you what it's like.
We still don't know what the moose means from this.
Wait.
One
2
second.
lines.
Okay.
2 lines.
The mekshum zeh, meshum calls that niklet tzura atzmis. So that's why it's called a tzura atzmis, an essential shape, which is the first level, tzelem. Essential shape. You know something? I think you're correct. I think I made a mistake. The first parentheses, I defined that first one's higher, the second one's lower. I'm just reading it back again. It says tzura shenishu bomina etzem shelamaylam b'chinas tzura. The first shape comes from the essence that's higher than shape. Oy sheba beha etzem v'nechka kaboy. Be, not me. I misread it. 1 second. It comes sheba beha etzem. And it's in the essence, and it's nechka kaboy, not in the object.
Right.
In the essence, it's shaped. In other words, it's the eir hakol batzmusay, like, as opposed to the eir hamispash.
That's in level, it's just different word.
Hold on. It's not the
Exact
same.
same
No, for
level?
sure not the same
No.
level. It wouldn't be oy.
It emerges.
It wouldn't be oy.
It emerges within the
It's a
etzem.
lower level.
Oh, no.
Within the etzem.
I don't know if it's higher or lower. One second, let me just say, I just defined the different. 1 second. It's different. I read before, I wrote, for some reason, I thought,
Because
no, 1 second, I may be wrong again. Because I don't know what Beha Etzem is. What are we talking about? The Etzem is the source, the artist? Or is the Etzem Chemer of the clay? That's the question. What is
The
Beha Etzem?
artist.
Who told you that?
I thought you were talking about arts and play here.
No, but he's talking about, but let's talk about, he's talking about a Chemer Poshet and a Tzura. So what's the Etzem? The Etzem is the Chemer Poshet. So,
But he's talking about Atzilus. He's not talking.
no, I understand. Tzura Shen Shabam in the Etzem, Shalamaylam B'chinas Tzura. Yishabah Be'a Etzem, and Nechka Kaboy. Okay, let's finish this, and we're definitely going to have to find out where the source for this is, because it's a little complicated here, more than it meets the eye.
Honestly, I don't understand what Tzura Atzmis is. To be very honest.
No, because, you know something? When you talk about seedless,
And not only that, here it says very clearly, the one is Eidus, one is Caleb. So that I understand. But when I think of it in terms of Tzura, I don't understand it.
maybe the
What do you
moose
mean?
itself
I
is
don't
good.
understand the question. You just,
No, he just says the difference between Tzura Atzmis and Tzura Mitzura. And he says this is Eres and Kalim. Okay, that I understand. If you think of it in terms of Eres and Kalim, I can understand. But if you think within Tzura itself, I don't understand what Tzura Atzmis and Tzura Midelis.
Could it
That I don't understand.
Could the second suit, first of all, Oris makes Caleb.
Okay.
No, I'll tell you what my...
I understand that. That's it. In terms of Eres and Kalim, I understand. Okay.
See, I was giving an example of clay, because I was thinking like this, the artist is God. The clay is the Chemer, the Adam, the Ofrim and Adam, which God creates in Tzelem and Mus. He shapes the offer. So the way, at least the way I was envisioning it, and that's a question, whether we have to envision it this way or we have to learn it differently. So there's the shape and form is Eris and Kalim, right? Meaning the Tzelem is Eir. So he starts speaking that Eir is the first shape. It's sort of atzmis in this item, in this matter. But it's outside of the etzem. So what's the etzem here? Is the etzem God, or is the etzem the chemer, the thing that you're shaping? You see what I'm saying? That's where I'm confused, frankly. That's what you have to further define. What's etzem here? So later he says etzem is the chemer, liyesei atzmi. Understand? What are we talking? So forget about the clay example. Let's say it's not a good example. So what we need some example. He's shaping something. What is he shaping? So you want to say he's shaping himself? Atzmus is being shaped? Is that what he's saying?
Yes, let's say yes.
It doesn't make sense because Atzmus does not get shaped. You understand?
Why not? A gil of Atmos is the shaping of Atmos.
It's manifesting Gilui.
So etzem here means Atzmus? Then, okay, so let's say it's not Atzmus. Let's say it's Keser. Let's for argument's sake then. Keser is a level of, let's say, Atzmi, like a Chemer. It doesn't yet have Esus Spheres in it. Let's speak like that. Then maybe that's the way to go. And now he's shaping and forming with Eris and Kalim. He's giving a shape and form to something that is more of a amorphous state. Amorphous is a good word.
Gilui.
Yeah, something like that. It doesn't say that Lashon, but just a Chemer Pashat. So it's a type of state, Keser. Eris is the Tzura Atzmis, in Elikus, in other words. So it's outside of the Etzem because it's some expression. Every expression has some shape and form. Keser does not, in this case. It doesn't say it's Keser, I'm just using my example here. This entity, this divine state...
I'm glad that if it's Keser, it's okay with you. Atmos is a problem. I'm glad that that's your issue.
No, because...
Yeah, okay, let's say them.
Hold on.
Could be either.
And that's a Tzura Atzmis. Let me just see how it fits. Etzem is the Chemer. Okay. Etzem Husadover, fine.
Yeah.
So Eris and Kalim of Atzilus are not the Etzem of Atzilus.
Right.
They're the shape and
It's
form
Surah?
of the Etzem of Atzilus, whatever that Etzem is. Let's
Right.
say that Etzem is Elikus.
Okay.
Eir is a Tzura Atzmis. It's giving it its initial, let's call it outline. Think of it like that. Initial form, initial shape.
And
And
Kalim
it-
is a Tzur Nivdelis.
One second. You do the Tzelmim Tzura Atzman Tzura. But now, how does that parenthesis go? Hani Tzura Shen Shabom in Etzem. Shalamayim B'chil Tzura. Tzura Shen comes from the Etzem. It's higher than Tzura Oisha Boba Etzem. Okay. Yeah. The interpretation of the parentheses has to be different. I think we gotta. How do we erase? Okay, you know what? You're all part of the process. So this is all Talmud Bavli here, back and forth. And listen, I strike from the record the clay analogy.
Why?
You're gonna have to cross out all your notes.
Clay is
No. 1 second. Let me correct myself. Not strike it completely from the record. I understand it's a good example for shaping something raw. The thing that bothers me is to say that Etzem of Atzilus is clay, and Eris and Kalim are the shape in the clay. Maybe I don't like clay for Etzem of Atzilus, but yeah, you could say it's still relevant to Mashal in that sense. I just want to qualify. That's what I meant. Really.
I thought we were still talking within the creator before it's
No, but and that's what he means. The two things in parentheses. Now I got it. Surah Shena Shabom and Etzem Shalamal B'chin Surah. It means that the essence here, whether it's Keser or let's call it Atzilus before Eris and Kalim, is a initial shape that's higher than a shape. Let's put it that way.
It reflects the essence.
Is that the Chomer?
Oh, so it's...
No one says that. Or deeper, that when the Eir becomes Eira Chesed, Eira Chesed, it actually creates a shape in the Etzem itself.
Yeah.
That's it. And why is that relevant? Because this is the Shitta of Ayin Beis. It's the difference between Eris Mitzvah and Eris Pshutim. Because in Ayin Beis he's going more according to the Shitta, the theory, the opinion, that the Eir themselves have shape and give shape to a Lakus.
Is this Golef Khalifa with Tahiri Law?
In the source, yes. In its source. But Golf Gluf itself is the two opinions. Was it the Kalim, is the Eris, that's the whole thing. Is the Shersha Eris, Shersha Kalim. Bottom line is here, that's what he's saying here. That's the Oy. Because there's two ways to say. You could say it's just a Tzura Shein, it's the first initial shape and form. It could be something like what you said before. What was the expression you said? Not the clay, when you make a mold?
Yeah.
You could say it's something like the mold that he creates. There's the mold of Chachma, Bina, and so on, and Chesed, and so on.
Conceptual one.
Exceptional mode. And that mold is not its actual shape. It's a Tzura Atzmis. It's the first shape. It's the first initial mold. You know what a mold is? It's like what says B'tzvas B'tzvas Asuya. Like the plier has to be made from a plier. So how was the first one made? So you always have to have something that created the image of it. But then you can copy. It's like the first time you create an image, then you copy that image many times. It's like that's the image of an image. It's like a copy machine. Seriously, the bus is like a copy machine for sure. The first one is the one that it's harder to do because the first one he's actually shaping himself in the first time. The first time that the tzir of Atzilus of Sphiris, and that's Eir. So Eir is that.
That's the mashal we use when we learn to
Oy Shababa.
the 10 copies. Copy number 1, copy number 10.
Oy Shababa Etzem V'Nechka Boy.
That's the mold.
That's
not the mold?
No, they're both the mold, but the second one actually
Non-materialistic mold.
shapes it in the Etzem also.
Non-materialistic mold. You're talking Yesh Mayan Ayin Beis. That's exactly.
The difference would be, you want to know the difference when you say that the Olah B'Machshavte, when in God's mind arises the tzir, the shape of existence. So we could legally say it's two things. You could interpret it in two ways: that he is envisioning an existence, but it's not really shaping his mind, so to speak, shaping his identity, or nechka kaboy, like in the Magid, the mashal of the Magid. That's like a father envisions a child, and he actually envisions that child is actually nechka, is engraved inside of his visage, inside of his vision. Yeah, that's it's a deeper type of. That's what we're saying. In this interface, it's a deeper relationship. If it's, so it's not just he's going outside of himself, so to speak. He's actually letting that shape manifest within himself. Okay. Mishum kol zeh nikra tzura atzmis. So tzura atzmis is I told you the color is a good example. The white color, white of light. Even when you see blue or red, it's really tzura atzmis is white. The red and blue is because the light has been shaped, Or let's say you dye wool. That's not tzura atzmis is the natural whiteness of the wool. The color you see is the tzura, is the dmus. I mean, these are examples of it.
The light is a better much because even in the blue or the whatever color it is,
Yeah.
the brightness of it that allows you to see it is the etzem ha'or.
Right. Ukidmusenu hem chinas hakelim. And the lower level and the shape, form that human beings created, kidmusenu, that's the level of container. She'enu b'chinas dveikus b'mekerim. They're not bound. See, he said before that tzura atzmis is bo min ha'etzem, double be'etzem, me'ein ha'etzem. Interesting to compare. These are the three things in air that we learned earlier. Remember that it's similar to the source.
I think so.
Connected. Not similar to the source. It comes from. What are the three things we learned? Comes from the source. It's similar to it, and then wants to.
This is the
Yeah,
definition of
some other.
It wants to return.
Akapanim kudmusenu, however, is kalim. So this is eris and kalim. We're not talking about yet primus eris and primus and kalim. Okay, so kalim comes with the kalim. They're not veikus b'kalim. Okay, they're not the kalim. They're not connected, which means this is already. Yeah. By the way, the copy machine works very well because.
Yeah, that's what we said.
Because-
The first copy and the 10th copy.
No,
The question is,
no.
where does it
It's
happen?
not the first copy and the
Yeah?
10th copy. First copy and 10th copy are the same thing.
No.
Yes. It's not the first copy.
The
It's the
original.
first
The
writing.
font.
What about the mirror?
Right, the font or the writing. Let's say I write something, and then you copy it. The writing is the first seer. The first time it comes into some form and shape, that's the tzura atzmis. Once you start copying, that's already a copy of that. That's what the thing.
How about
So in other words,
mirror?
God created, let's say, the model of Esses Sphiris, and He didn't yet create many human beings. It's like Adam. Adam Rishon says, "Ches mishal Adam," every human being is created. So that first template.
Template.
That's it.
Good.
The template is the tzura atzmis, and everything else is the tzura. Exactly. It's perfectly computed.
How about a mirror image? Is mirror?
Right.
Rabbi Jacobson,
Yeah.
I
mirror,
don't know what template
mirror
is.
image, is that
I said
correct?
template. No, I wouldn't say mirror.
When you make it.
Mirror image is a reflection of something. How is
The
that?
body makes them.
Which is exactly
In
the
the
same.
brain, that's the template.
He's not speaking about same, not same.
The whole thing.
Talking about whether it's the first shape and form or it's the later ones that shape from the shape. Template is a good word. So the template,
Any form is itself.
huh?
He's excited.
The template
Yeah, because
is dovuk.
It's in the brain.
Because
Like an antibody. It doesn't-
The artist in this case, or whoever, the writer or the creator, the template he creates, the template has to be very much a reflection exactly of what he wants in his image. The copies from the template is already a step away. So let's say WordPress is now the going template. So that is created by its creators. When people start using it for whatever their websites or other things, that's already a step away from the source. Open source. You can use all these things. Open source.
But once again, with an artist, a template is not the original, right? If an artist wants to make a lithograph, he has the original painting that he did with his hand, then he makes a template from that he then can make the copies from. Is that not correct?
Okay, so technically you could say the lithograph is.
So what's the first one that he did with his hand?
That's in the.
That's
You know, but,
so-
fine, but I call the first one template. You can call it both.
No, because I don't think it is.
When you start talking about an
I
artist,
mean,
you
I
point
don't
to the
know.
same trap as the clay and the sculpture.
Which is
It's something separate from him. We're not talking separate.
Look at your-
It's a conceptual template.
exceptional.
It's a conceptual template. It's not a
But even
physical.
conceptual.
No, but I don't mind. You can, so then call the lithograph the Surah Atzmus. Fine.
The original.
It's
The
semantics.
original.
It doesn't matter, whatever. Template is original often in our language. You know, it's true. The guy made a template, probably had a template before the template.
Right, he had an original before this.
Okay, fine.
The purpose of the discussion is the lithograph is a template.
So you
Yeah.
release it.
The lithograph is, but we want to get back to the original creation of the artist's work.
All the muscles fall down. You can use a negative.
Never
You
fall
can use a
down.
negative.
The gam, let's continue. Let's go.
Okay.
The gam, the gaba er, the savas hakelim huma er, and even compared to the, and also compared to the, and also compared to the energy. That the savas hakelim, remember the formation of the containers, comes from there. You do the misavas er nasa keli, from the thickness. The thick particles.
What's this line teaching us?
Well, let me say, read it, and then I'll.
Mamash, in this case.
Misavas er nasa keli, from the thickness, the thick particles of the energy comes create the keli. How does that begin? Tzura, mitzura, shitzura nivdalas.
It continues.
Let's say yes, Shlema. 1 second. Shem begins kakem, shem begins dveikus b'mekero. He's adding here is like this. You know, obviously the containers are a step away from the energy is a reflective of the source. Even though it's an expression and has definition, it's the first shape and form. The containers are already a step away. So he's saying they're a step away not just from the source, the etzem, they're also a step away from the energy. So even though gam l'gaba er, the savas hakelim ma'er kiyadua, even compared to the energy, where the containers actually come from this energy. So the energy already has the shape and form that will ultimately, in a more amorphous state, in a more subtle or abstract state, will have some form of particle, some form of some shape, some tselem. It has tselem. So even though the mousse comes from the tselem, the form comes from the shape of the oir, but it's still tzura mitzura. It's still a shape from a shape. And therefore, therefore, a shape that's separate from the original, a form that's separate from the original shape, basically.
In other words, you're saying that it's not only separate from the etzem, it's separate from the Jewish.
Nivdelos, right, yeah. V'yesh leimer, d'ima yeshu l'chera keli dover nivdel min ha'er, he's saying now yesh leimer. And we could say, which is a chiddush, yesh leimer is always a chiddush, yesh leimer you could say, d'ima yesh, even though that l'chera, supposedly the container is separate from the energy, in truth, there's a connection, there's a relationship between the container and energy. Again, remember we keep going back and forth. It's separate, it's connected, it's separate, it's connected. Constantly the interface is dynamic and it's not static. So really Yesh Leim is actually, I would say it's a new paragraph now. He's now adding he finished. He stated what he wanted to say. So let's just sum it up. Tzelem Mus, that the human being created in the Tzelem Mus of the vine is Tzelem Mus is Eris and Kalim of Zada Atzilus. Eris Tzelem Kalim Mus. This is an extension of what he spoke in the previous chapters. how Eir and Keli are how Eir and Keli, one is reflective of this essence, the Ayin, and one is the Yesh, is the expression. He didn't yet speak about inner and outer containers. He's moved back to Eir and Keli, just for the record. You know, the previous chapters were all about the inner and outer container.
Yeah, because the Ur is not finished with acting on the Keli that he made.
Yeah. So now he's going back and saying that he's going to go back now to the inner and outer containers. But now, but first he had to explain that Selam and Mus is Eir and Keli. Fine. Now he's saying Yeshlemer. Even though
It makes one think that it's the two separate containers, the inner and outer aspects of the of the container. So
Yeah. That's what I meant.
Yeah, I
But
know.
they are two aspects, the two levels of each
container.
container. Yeah. Okay, do it. Now he's explaining. Now he's going to the other side of things. So it's two separate. Remember the previous chapter when he spoke about the primis and eres, he said Chetzenes HaKelim are still within the hand is the potential to write infinite amounts. And yet it's nivdal, it's still separate. So here too, he just explained that it's nivdal, it's separate, the satsura mitzura, the tmus from the tzelam, but it still has a connection. That's the yeshlemer. Like Kiyudu being Teresh B'Ksav, like it's known about the writings of Teresh B'Ksav, the written Torah, the letters of the written Torah. Shetzorach li is dafka be'esis elu betmuna zu dafka. They have to be written, not quantum. They have to be written exactly like these letters and in this image. That's why we see a scribe, a sefer writes, he has to write a very precise way. Such letters are betmuna and a certain shape of those letters. Just like the letters can be, if they're not written right, the letter's missing. Also, if you don't write the right shape, if an aleph is the wrong shape,
But it was
it's
originally
possible.
quantum. It was originally quantum.
Aces shalish. Yeah, aces shalish.
Yeah.
Fire.
We're talking at a lower level than quantum. at that
Commission
point.
cost, but Malkamacha has been taken Shabbat Pel Teres B'Ksav, like it's we can learn, like we say, like it's written elsewhere. The difference between the oral Torah and the written Torah, the B'Teres Shabbat Pel in Aces Iker. In Teres Shabbat Pel, in the oral Torah, the Aces are not the primary element. However, in the written Torah, in contrast, the written Torah has to be specifically these letters.
But we have the
V'hainu shein beir nalei v'nam
white spot
shocha.
is the Ur.
Right.
V'hainu shein beir nalei v'nam shocha. That which means that they reflect on the way the hamshach has to be. In other words, it's not incidental. You write these letters because you want to have the hamshacha, the transmission of what Teresh B'Ksav transmits.
Yeah.
It has to be specifically through these defined shapes and letters and shapes.
But there are different varieties of that too, right? There's the Beis Yosef, there are
What's the
other
difference? So
No,
what?
so I'm just saying that within this predetermined kalim, there's variety.
How many? Just a few. They're all within the same categories. They're not very different.
Also, there was before Ksavashuri.
Right.
Yeah, but they're good. But that doesn't change.
There was change.
No, but Ashaka is also the Ashaka is.
No, but there's a certain parameters, and there's things that are called puzzle.
That's right.
It's not everything is. There's
That's
the
how
things
you
that
write
you-
the hay.
Yeah, and if you don't write it in these few ways, it's absolutely unacceptable. Remember, they're all
You can't
Hebrew.
mix them. You can't mix
They're all
them.
Hebrew. There's only 22 letters in the Hebrew
It's a variety
alphabet.
within
Their commonality is much more
defined.
common than their
It's a
distinction.
variety within the defined.
It's what?
Anyway.
Variety within the defined.
Right.
Why is that relevant here?
No, just trying to say that it's, the Rebbe's trying to say we're talking about determinists, that it has to be exactly one way.
Exactly.
Not quantum, and yet within this aspect we still
That's
see
after
there's a
quantum.
level of quantum.
No level of quantum at all. God
No,
forbid.
It has to be a hay,
God
not another
forbid.
letter. That's
Yeah.
the
But then within the hay you can
Between
have
the
all
yud and the
kinds of
hay is the
That's just-
quantum.
There's 3-4 ways. That's it. That's called quantum.
Between the yud and the hay is the quantum. That's all. It was ready to let's do that.
There's no quantum here at all.
Sure
No,
is. It's above
absolutely
this.
not.
It's
When it comes to mitzvahs, there's no
Right.
quantum. There's two opinions of which way to do it. That's all. So, but they're both defined.
But once you choose one way, you have to stay consistent, right? If you're going to write a Sefer Torah in the Alter Rebbe's Sav, you have to stay on.
How's that relevant here?
No, I'm just trying to talk about the fact that it's not. There's not all, the Rebbe was trying to. I was thinking.
There's nothing to be qualified. It's exactly correct. Halacha states a certain way to write it, and that's it.
So between the Zul, he's talking about says. It's
In
just
other-
in
in
between
other
the
words-
Whatever day it is, so what? So whatever opinion. How many are there already? There are a few opinions. That's it.
opinions are just what the Tmuna is.
You're right, right.
Okay.
With the established.
Bottom line is, like the Rebbe would say, you're missing the point. The point is in Teresh Shabbat Peh,
Yeah.
Eish are not a Iker. That's the bottom line. Then Teresh Shabbat Peh, it's not primary, the letters, it's the understanding of it. It's not about the letters. In the written Torah,
But it has to, even that.
in the written Torah specifically,
Yeah.
what
no,
trying to
that's
split
not-
it here?
but no, I'm not
In the
trying-
written
no, I'm trying to
Torah,
understand
it's
this.
critical, if you,
Yeah, this whole
a
book is
letter,
about splitting hairs. The whole sefer is about splitting hairs. That's what the whole thing is.
absolutely not. No, first of all,
I mean,
when the Rebbe Rashav splits hairs, and when you do them, it's not necessarily.
It's so accurate.
Why do we say?
Okay, so that's
Got a
number
better
one.
razor.
Very simple. He's talking about that Teresh Shabbat. You know, you don't want to lose sight of the message here. There's a message here.
Right, okay.
It's very simple. In Teresh Shabbat, the writing of the letters is critical. It's possible if it's not written right. Who cares how many opinions there are? It's just a matter of opinions. In Teresh Shabbat Peh, it's not. It doesn't. The letters are not the primary element. That's what he's saying here. It's the
But-
bottom line.
We're trying to find
No
out
one
what's
knows
the
if
moose.
you use other words, it's gonna be possible. No such thing.
We don't.
If you use
So
other
far,
words,
we've only
it's possible.
described the moose as
Use other
being.
words to
It's not.
express
It's
So this,
not similar.
this Thursday, we're
Now
going to
we're
be reading the
trying to-
Megillah,
we
which
don't
is
know why it's
Torah,
the moose.
the
Up
Torah.
into the
No, Megillah is not compared to
Right.
Sefer Torah. That's-
Right.
No, we're not talking about Megillah.
How do we?
Megillah has much more lenient rules.
No, but even, so
Still has to be
it's
on
fine,
file.
it's fine, you can see the stuff.
So that's-
It has to be written this way.
I'm
No, no, it's not, we're talking
Okay.
about, why do we
All
have,
right, go
he's not talking about a Megillah, he's talking about a Sefer Torah, Pashtus, and he's talking about a distinction between Teresh Shabbat and Teresh Shabbat Peh. That's all that's relevant
Okay.
here.
Why is
Shaitas
it?
are the kli to the
Why is
earth,
it the
that's
moose?
it.
Why is the moose? It's so separate. The kli is so separate from the or. Why is the moose? We say it's a tzur mitzvah. Why are we saying that's the moose? The moose has is a tzur sheni, but tzur sheni has to look like the tzur rishon. We're saying that the kli is something separate, davar nifto.
So,
Even though that it's made from or, now it's become something that's different. It's not davar, it's makor.
But
We
even
define
so,
the
it has
whole
a shaykhus
thing
to the earth.
that it's a tzur mitzvah because it's niv, because it's not davar. How do we describe that it is like it? How do we say that the tzur?
he's in the middle of discussing it, let's finish when he discusses, then we'll see. So he's explaining here, let's not lose sight of what he's explaining, and that is that even though the container is like the tmus, it's a tzur nivl, it's a disconnected, a detached shape, form, yet it has a connection to the energy. He's explaining it. So he started by explaining the difference between the written and the oral Torah. Now, one Asius is Iker, has to be written a specific way, particular letters, etc. And the other one, the Asius, the letters are not primary. Why in Teresh Shabbat is it primary? Why can't you just say the understanding of what it says? Bereshit bara Elokim. Who cares if it says it in this way or that way? God created heaven and earth. In many ways you could say that. Because the letters themselves, that's the way, they shem hein meiden alef and amshacha. The letters themselves in Teresh Shabbat are the way the energy is transmitted. So, for example, you can transmit through a film with a projector images, and it doesn't really matter which exact images. The bottom line, you want to get the message across. But sometimes, no, it's exactly these shapes and forms of the letters are the key way of this transmission. They have to go through this transmission.
Maureen.
Vadugum b'zeh hu b'chinas hakelim. Vadugum b'zeh hu b'chinas hakelim d'atzilus. The example of this are the containers of Atzilus sheyesh lam shaychus el ha'er and shemoidim al ha'er. These letters in the written Torah are an example for containers of Atzilus, that they are specifically tailored, which is so much fundamental part of Ayin Beis, that the kelim are tailored to the energy. For example, the container of the eye is not incidental. Container of the eye cannot contain the energy of ears, of sound. So the container is exactly tailored to the energy. So the letters are, in Teresh Shabbat, the letters are not circumstantial, they're not incidental, they're critical to the way that they're tailored to the way the energy flows. So the kelim, therefore, this is the Eshlemer, that the containers, even though they're a tzura from the tzura, they're already a step apart, a step away from the source, but they're still shaychus, they're still connected, they have still relationship. And they shemeidim ala eir, and they in some ways reflect this energy. In other words, like we spoke before about the wick. Use a piece of metal and you can't light a flame from it. use different letters and they won't express this idea. So even though it's a container and it's a separate from, let's not forget, it's still a container to the energy. He's just reminding us the other side of it. That as much as it's a part, it's also an extension of. But remember, it's still a keli and this is a air. It's back and forth. It's just understanding both elements. Okay. V'ayin mashir zbar lekaman da'zeh yitnu. And look what what we discuss later. That's like in the next volume. I guess he talks
So you're
about
saying
this.
that the ore not only forms the kalim, but the kalim go back and form the ore.
I didn't say form the ur. They're tailored to the ur. They're specifically tailored. And they reflect the ur that comes through them. No, the keli has to fit the ur. You can't just take any keli and just stick it in,
Right.
and the ur is going to manifest. So the keli itself is somewhat of a reflection of the.
So you have to say the
energy.
keli
In
itself.
other words, let's say the eyeball
Right,
is a container for the vision, the energy of a sight.
right.
That's it. The commissions by the El Perek Reish Pei Vav, like we learned earlier in the chapter 2.
Technical question.
86.
When the Rebbe Rashab wrote it, he wrote it once and then he split it and put in the Kitzurim the second time.
And then another time he also
But he didn't rewrite the whole thing.
no. but
So how did he put in the Ayin Bar?
no, he went to the Maitik.
And he gave him just that little line.
No. He wrote on the Hatoka. He wrote.
Ayin Mashis Bar Kam?
Yeah,
He
all over the place. You see it.
Well, on the side? How did it technically, how did he do it?
Sometimes a dot on the side.
On the side, Ayin Mashis Bar
the side
Kam,
or
on the
dot.
Maitics.
Sometimes he wrote entire sections. A lot
And the
of
Maitik
pieces
put it
here.
in. And the Maitik put it in.
Later, no, there was a letter.
The second time put it.
Surah Mitzurah. That was all it.
No, seriously.
The Rebbe Rashab wrote the text.
The first time.
The first time, just the flowing text.
With no Kitzurim,
no nothing, no beginnings,
Right.
no ends.
You saw
Right.
that, Tucker?
Yeah.
You can see it in the back.
First of all, some of it is in the back, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you could see it.
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
copies.
so then he made it.
Here, he wrote like this.
Yeah.
He wrote like this. This is like page hey,
Yeah.
and they surface here. Just wrote hundreds of pages.
Right.
They have a description of exactly how many pages.
Yeah, I understand.
Then he went months later. We don't know exactly, depending on time, when he said it. Let's say it was Parsha.
And he split it.
No, when he said it. 1 second. He said it. Parsha Akev. Then he added the beginning.
And the end.
And the end. He said it.
And the Prokim.
1 second. Hold on. He added the beginning and the end,
Right.
and that was that.
By saying.
So we had no.
And there was Prokim
No,
already.
by saying and then writing a whole kuntras of Haskolas V'Siyumin.
Right.
There's a whole kuntras of just Haskolas
And the
V'Siyumin.
Pnim, what did he do to the Pnim?
Didn't touch the prim at that point.
The Pnim had Prokim already?
No.
No Prokim at all?
No. Listen, this is how
Right.
a Chamer became Atzura.
Right.
1 second. It's a good
Right.
example.
Yes.
Hold on. 1
First
second.
he wrote it.
Hold on. Let me tell you. I'll tell you.
Right,
exactly
right.
what.
Talk.
So there was a whole hemshich. Now he added beginnings and ends, and there's a whole kuntras of beginnings and ends, and he says, and then he added the
But after
prokim.
he said it in Zal, that's when he wrote it.
Sometimes it's in before.
He wrote it
Sometimes he
first,
may
then
have.
said it first.
There's no rule. Sometimes he wrote. We don't know.
That's why.
We don't know exactly. Could have written it before. He could have written after.
No, seems like he wrote it before, Simon.
That's why the Kalim.
No, that's checked. My mother for sure he wrote
Back to
before.
the Or.
That's what I mean, or all these.
Change the Kalim.
Beginnings and ends, they're not sure. It doesn't say clearly.
No, but the
It could have been
Maimonides
anything. Could have written Sunday. Could have written it Friday. Could have written the week before.
Perfect example of Or.
We don't always know. You just know he wrote it.
Right.
When he wrote it, who knows when he wrote it?
He
Okay.
wrote it and then said it.
I just told you.
Is that true?
Sometimes one way, sometimes
Write
the
it
other way.
down.
Listen, you're gonna have to follow the recording. I can't repeat myself 3 times here. I'm not just speaking to you.
Right.
You're so busy writing it, you missed the
Well,
next
okay.
step.
Then he added the beginnings and ends and added the prokim. And said that the beginning of Perek this is where this beginning goes. He actually created my monim through that. And when he added the prokim, he also added the kitzurim.
Right.
Okay. Then came another stage. He gave it to a maitik. He gave it to someone who now wrote it over with the beginnings and ends and the prokim.
Right.
And then on that, he edited it again, and then he added paragraphs and added.
So it was written again after that.
Not the Rebbe Rashab.
No, I'm saying
a
it
maitik.
was. The Maitik
Someone
was-
wrote the whole thing in order.
Right.
You have that also here. Look at page this. Look here. Here's
I understand. So this much is she's bar the Kamon.
I want you to see
is
something.
after that.
Look on page Ches in the surface. You'll see right away.
Right.
That's the Maitik wrote everything, and on the side and the bottom, that's the Rebbe Rashab added. Look how much he added.
Right.
He didn't
So
just
later
add a
was
line.
after this, it was written again with the stuff inside.
And some not. No.
Why? What do you mean?
The printing here is already from things like this. It was not necessarily written again. The printing is from the final, but they're comparing it. They compare it to all versions. Basically, you need to compare to the original version, because what happens with the Maitik made a mistake. There could be mistakes in here. Even though Rebbe Rashab edited it, but he didn't really, so...
And noch a Sache I don't understand. The
Let me just...
Til Vayeshev Ein Gimel we had, until the Rebbe printed it.
Yeah.
Why? Why till there we had?
Because the Rebbe Rashab gave it to the Maitik.
And after that he didn't?
Nasla Farsim. No,
But the Rebbe said it till Ayin Vav. Whatever he said till Ayin Vav, how come nobody wrote it down?
Very few people. And
Nobody wrote it down?
No.
What? Doesn't make sense. Simpson, all these guys, they didn't write it down?
Was already Adam Lubavitch.
What do you mean till Ayin Vav was in Lubavitch?
There was very few
The
people
whole
there.
second chelik, how come?
There were no manichim around the time.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, there's a lot.
The Rebbe Rashab was putting down this Seder of Chassidus, and nobody wrote it down.
First of all, everyone knew he was writing himself. That's just through the record. So
Simpson didn't have a nochas of what he
he
wrote.
wasn't there anymore. In Eter he was there. He wasn't there in Ayin Beis.
Major, nobody's there.
First of all, maybe they wrote and it was I'm not, he told them not to be mefarsim. That's also possible.
Think so?
Yeah, because he didn't give it out. It was intentional. It wasn't not given out for a reason. He gave out till Vayeshev. Let's finish.
Yeah,
I
I'm
want to
sorry,
finish the
right,
page.
right.
I want to
Sorry.
finish the
Rebbe
page.
Rashab
Hey, listen, guys,
Everything,
lighten
yeah.
up a little bit.
Everything.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, a lot of things, if you really want to appreciate, I sometimes look at these Ksishriyad. I don't have them all, I have some that, because you want to sometimes see, when you see what he adds, you see how it was before he added, you can appreciate it sometimes better. Because you see, original, and it gets more clear in a way.
Didn't include all the sides?
Yeah.
Final print, this one does.
Yeah. Include those.
Yeah.
Of course.
You have the original?
You see the intervention
Yeah.
in the Torah and
The
the
Rebbe's
Torah.
library, Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just go on
Yeah,
here.
right, sorry.
So this is Commissioners Barley Perek Reish Pevav, like we learned before in chapter 286. The Kalim Dezar Shem B'chinas Gvonei Ha'er. Remember there we talked about actually the colors. So the Kalim add the colors to the Eir. So we see that there's a connection between them. It was chapter 286. Yeah, it was a very
What's the character?
yeah. They gave them character. So we see from this the other side that the containers are actual reflection of the light, and they describe them. They give them character. I like that. Yeah. Now he goes back to the other side. And nevertheless, nevertheless, even though the kalim have a connection like these letters and these colors, there's still tzura mitzura. There's still a shape from a shape. Levad. Tzura mitzura levad. Only a shape from a shape. Because also the energy, as we said, is also only a tzura, not the essence. Not the essence. And that's why the other side of things, in truth, so he has two emeses. Remember before he says, V'hainu, yesh leim et ime yesh l'chera keli dover nivdel hine be'emes had yesh l'shayches. Now there's another emes. Zwei emesen. So two things are true. The first true, that even though it's nivdel, it's separate, it still has a connection. And now, the emesu, l'chem be'emes, it's interesting how he uses the emes twice. Ein edemet kelim l'gabe eir shemein atzim. You can compare the containers to the energy, because the energy is, at the end of the day, is me'ein ha'etzim. And kelim are not. The energy is similar to the source. Me'ein, of the same
And you can easily make the
personality.
argument the opposite way.
Same personality.
Because it could be anything, it has all possibilities, energy has all possibilities.
Mashenke ba'kelim hagam shemoirim ala eir. See the words me'ein and moirim. So the energy is a reflective. When you see, for example, the energy of the sun, the light of the sun, it's reflective of the sun. It's sunlight. When you see the letters in Teresh B'Ksav, for example, so yes, the letters are the channel through which the kedusha, the holiness, and the message of Teresh B'Ksav come, but the letters themselves are not reflective. An aleph is not like sunlight. It's not like the light of the divine. It's a channel for the divine. So there are channels, and then there are things that are not even channels. If you use the wrong letters, the Sefer Torah is puzzle, and it's not even a channel. So remember, you have to use. So the wick is not like the wick is a container for a flame, but it's not the flame. Okay, even though the containers show meirim ala eir, what the word meirim would be? I don't say reflect. They made it. They
Depend on.
No. Shemedim.
Not sure wrong.
Like a guiding.
Yeah, it's like teaching, but it's more they shemedim. They show on. They are
Indicate.
Guiding.
they indicate on.
Guiding post.
They indicate on the light, and then nevertheless, they're not similar to the etzem ha'er, to the essential energy. Sha'eru b'chinas pshitis, going back to air being ayin and keli yesh, because the air, the energy is pshitis, which has no shape and form. What do we call it? Indeterminate, undefined, amorphous.
Uncompounded.
Undefined mass.
Amorphous is probably very good, yeah. Kelim b'chinas mitzias, and kelim and containers are mitzias. The gamma air by the kelim b'chinas mitzias. To the extent that even the air also through the containers also come into a mitzias. Through the containers, the air also comes into mitzias. Clearly meaning that it's a different stage, it's a different state. So kelim and air are a different state. We spoke about, remember we talked about malachim and shamas as being different in primis and saying. So there's two things, they said when each of the Masmid came to America. So there's the video of it also. The Chassidim, they saw a chassid. They never saw a chassid like that. Now there were many chassidim around, but he was like a dugma of something that was like unique from the real thing. And then there were people who were shluchim that the Rebbe would send to bring a message. Not necessarily, if you watch how they daven or how they behave, they were a reflection of the Rebbe's inner court. So both of them, one is like Asius and one is like Eir. One is you see a dugma of what meant, what the Rebbe is like. And another one brought the message of the Rebbe. And a third one doesn't even bring the message, so he's b'chlal not on the table. So I'm saying there's a kelim.
Oh, you mean the one that distorts the message?
Well, that's even worse, right? The Rebbe spoke that last sikh about the Kinnis Hashul between a shliach and a shatchen, whether Eliezer was a shliach or a shatchen. Because a shatchen has his own interest. A shliach is just carrying the message of the Mishaleach. A shatchen is already a mamutza mafsik.
Both, actually.
Yeah, there's two opinions. There's two opinions.
There's no shliach, a shachna.
So it goes like this. The gamma er ba de kein b'chinas mitzias. Hari shabaer ima yesh gili er b'chinas. I'm going to read quickly because I want to finish the chapter. Hari shabaer ima yesh gili er b'chinas sir canal. So now he's going back. And even though the energy, even though it's a gili er, it's already a revelation. Or b'chinas sir, as we said, it's an expression, so it has shape. The kol mokim, we said behechrech it has shape. It's not just it has to have. It's expressed. It has to have shape. The kol mokim hari his gabrus ha'atzmis by nevertheless, what dominates, what over his gabrus, I would say, what overwhelms, not overwhelms, overpowers, what's dominating,
Primary.
primary